Folks, there's long been a disparity in this country between crack cocaine and powder cocaine. The sentencing has changed multiple times. It used to be 100 to 1 under President Obama. It went from 100 to 1 to 14 to 1, but there's still a disparity. Well, today, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland announced that they are trying to reverse decades of this disparity. And so what he has done is instructed federal prosecutors to end sentencing disparities in cases involving the distribution of crack and powder cocaine.
Good evening. My name is Jerome Deering Bay. I'm with RCSNow.org, co-founder and program director of that particular organization, and Rich Moynes Productions. We want to speak to what the United States Attorney General has just recently handed down in relationship to crack cocaine and powder cocaine. Back in the 80s, when they implemented new legislation as it related to crack cocaine distribution, minority communities were impacted by the 100 to 1 ratio, meaning that 100 to 1 gram of crack cocaine was defined as being 100 grams. Powder cocaine was just 1 gram. So African American communities was impacted by that. And through subsequent studies and research, it was determined that crack cocaine was no more potent than powder cocaine. And but yet and still, 35 years later, we're still in this discussion addressing the disparity between the two. And Merrick Garland has did a admirable thing by dictating a memorandum to his United States Attorney's Office throughout the United States to reduce those indictments to show 1 to 1 ratio. Okay, now, the only problem with that is Merrick Garland, who is the only United States Attorney General, cannot dictate to federal judges. So, the people that are still suffering the impact and the effect of those particular ratios is not guaranteed the relief that they would hope that they would get through the act committed by Merrick Garland. In other words, everything is still predicated upon federal judges who have the discretion to apply the law. Merrick Garland cannot make law. He's only a United States Attorney General. The only people that can make law is Congress. And the courts have to act upon the laws that the court sees documented in federal law. So I would hope that everybody's waiting on the Equal Act that's currently sitting in Congress, which reduces those particular penalties that Merrick Garland acted upon, benefits from that legislation. But as you know, if in fact Congress doesn't act before December 31st, then they're going to have to wait 2 to 3 years for that law to become reproposed before Congress. Congressmen, congresswomen take it up, sign off on it, and present it to the full Congress. As it stands right now, based upon reports from Roland Martin and other outlets, the Equal Act is supposed to be tied to the omnibus bill. So if in fact it's tied to the omnibus bill, people in Congress are hoping that it passes along with the omnibus bill that they anticipate being passed. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to happen. So what we try to do is clarify issues that outlets, commentators are not versed in. And so, you know, you have a lot of individuals out here talking about things and bring on so-called experts and haven't spent a day in federal prison, haven't spent a day in jail, study the research that they compile, and it's compiled by others, but that doesn't necessarily make it true. So what we want to do is try to aid and assist common people with a common sense understanding. But we know that all sense is not common. So it's our job to explain common sense when it comes to legislation, Congress, your constitutional rights, laws, enforcement, and things of that nature. So there's still people in federal prison today that are suffering the ramifications of the 100-to-1 ratio. Still doing life sentence, still doing 30 years in prison, still doing 20 years in prison. They haven't been impacted because every law that was passed since 2006, the very first law that was passed dealing with the crack cocaine issue, you have people in federal prison that are still suffering under this discriminatory law. And it's mind-boggling to me that a person, a conscious person, would think that crack cocaine could be more powerful than pure cocaine. When cocaine is made or created in the countries that it's made in, it's 98%. Now they say crack cocaine was 100%. How are you gonna make crack cocaine 100% and you add baking soda to it? I could never figure this out. And would no chemist in the United States attest to that? But they still sentence our people to a 100-to-1 ratio. And there's still people in federal prison suffering behind that. And I'm not coddling African-American legislators because they jumped on the bandwagon in 1986. They jumped on the bandwagon in 1987 when the United States sentencing guidelines changed to the 100-to-1 ratio. Read the case United States versus Clary out of Eastern District of Missouri, an 8th Circuit case. Read it, C-L-A-R-Y. Read that case. It can give you more information than I can ever give you. Read United States versus Peterson out of the 4th District of North Carolina. It'll give you more insight than I can ever give you. It gives you everything you want. All you do is Google those cases and read them. And they give you the history on this ill-cited legislation that affected and impacted our people as a whole. So, despite my regard for Merrick Garland and the other individuals that have subsequent the 1984 Act got on the bandwagon and supported the change, y'all was in cahoots with that legislation from the beginning. And being there at the beginning, I can never forget the impact that it has had on our communities. And I would hope and pray that individuals who are still concerned about the effect of legislation that occurs in our country don't take my word for it. Don't take Rich Moines Productions' word for it. I just gave you 2 cases. These are astute lawmakers who gave forth opinions, well-read, well-versed opinions regarding this legislation. And in order to be informed, you have to interact with the dialogue and the language that's out there. I'm like, again, don't take my word for it. You ain't got to take my word for it. Everything that you're hearing now through the Roland Martin show, through these other shows that are speaking about how great this legislation is doublespeak. That's not spitting venom on Roland Martin. I got the utmost respect for him. He's always been out front. But I know from where I sit that he don't know nothing as it relates to this legislation. Everything he has learned is from individuals that don't know nothing about this legislation. And the reason why is because they haven't been where I've been. They haven't experienced what I've experienced. They haven't experienced what my community has experienced. They get their information from individuals who allegedly are experienced in this area. How are you experiencing something you never experienced? To manifest itself. So with that being said, I hope that you glean something from this timely conversation, and know that we're trying to do everything in our power just to bring you the information. And you don't have to believe a word we say. I've cited 2 cases for you. The 2 cases I cited will reveal everything to you about this legislation. The yet and still is still in effect today. This is 2022. These bills went into effect in 1984. These bills have been rebuked since 1994, 10 years later. But they're still in effect, and they're still impacting our families. But you hear these names, so-called black leadership, out here speaking about this 35, 40 years later, man. And y'all ain't got this stuff changed yet? Come on. You can't make this up. With that being said, I bid you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and hope that each and every one of your family members enjoys prosperity and happiness. Thank you for allowing me in your home.